This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
Truly love what our next guest offers, and that is insight on how to improve your life through leadership skills. That's essentially it. That's the basics of it. Guess what? We're all leaders. We're leading our own lives. Last week, we talked about the 4 hats of leadership. We're going to hit that up again and then apply that to not your professional life, but your personal life. He is the man behind so many different programs that can move your life forward called Intentional Achievements. And he's back with us. He's an amazing life coach. And I'm just broadly saying that's what he does. There's so much more involved in that. Never met anybody like him with the insight he has that's easy to understand and applicable to anything we do. Joe Price back with us. How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back on, sir.
Love when you're here. Learn so much. I take notes. I wanted to grab my notes, but it's on the other side of the studio. From last time we got together with the 4 hats of leadership. Can we recap?
Yeah, so let's recap what those 4 hats are. If you remember, the first one is entrepreneur, and when you put your entrepreneur hat on, you're thinking about innovating something new, maybe taking some risks and open up a new area or a new solution to a problem that you've seen in the marketplace. You're looking for trends in the industry and how you're going to deal with those. The challenge for the entrepreneur is the fact that they're used to looking at the bigger picture, but not the details, right? And so an entrepreneur starts a business and then gets lost in the weeds or forgets to get lost in the weeds because they can't see the forest for the trees, kind of thing. They're so concerned about the trends and what's happening out there in the marketplace that the day-to-day operations of the business sort of fall behind. So that's when you start putting your leader hat on, and the leader is the visionary and the storyteller and the coach, establishes culture in the organization. The typical blind spot there is leaders have a tendency to avoid conflict, and they're over reliant on their leadership skills and their charisma instead of establishing processes and systems and KPIs inside the business so that the business is not person dependent, right? Because if that leader is not there, what happens to the business? Or if they're not fully present for some reason because there's so many things going on. So that's when they put the manager hat on, and the manager hat is a person who is very organized, plans very well, understands systems and processes, and establishes those things in the organization. So the culture of the organization runs itself rather than being dependent on people. And the challenge for the manager is that they get wrapped up in bureaucracy and very rigid to force people to follow the process and the system and not take the people side of things into account, right? So each one of those hats has their strengths and their restraints. And you may have heard this before, but our greatest strength is our greatest weakness, right? So you put the manager hat on and you're very organized and you got all the processes going on. The greatest weakness is if somebody's not following that, you get very upset and on their case and not really determine what's going on in your life or your personal life or what's happening inside the organization that may be preventing you from doing that. And they just stay very blind focused into that system. Now, what happens in the organization with everything that needs to get done? So stuff has to happen, work has to get done, deadlines need to be met. And so you need to put your specialist hat on, which is the expert in doing the job. You're the problem solver, and you want to make sure that whatever is happening inside the organization gets done when it needs to get done on time in the right way. And so all four of those hats are roles that you and I are going to play inside our organization to make sure that a holistic approach to the growth and the scalability of our business happens the way it should.
So before we get into applying the four hats of leadership to the personal side of things,
Sure.
I recall you saying last time we got together that we can wear many different hats. The hats can flip by. I got to change hats now. New situation presented. Oh, I have a meeting coming up at 4:30 today. Different hat going on.
Correct.
We can't be the jack of all trades. So if you're proficient at the entrepreneur hat and maybe one of the other hats, but now you're tasked with wearing the specialist hat. How do you pivot over? And my example here, and as I apply it in my mind,
Sure.
different type of hats, but I wear the creative hat. That's always been me. I do not at all like to wear the financial hat, i.e.,
Right.
the bookkeeper, the accounting. I don't do that. However,
Sure.
there are times where I have to throw that hat on because things need to get personal attention, or let's say Adam, our bookkeeper, might not be aware of certain things. So now I'm wearing that hat. Maybe you need some time off. Now what was that, client? You want that invoice and it's got to be marked paid just for your records. I don't know how do I do that? I got to Google that, how to make QuickBooks to say it's paid. Like, I'm not an expert at that. So
Right.
how do we change hats, but do it in a way that we're not hurting ourselves or the company?
Yeah. So my question to you is, do we always have to wear all of the hats? And what I mean by that is, let's say that you have a financial person, but you want to have a backup to that person just in case. Do you put that hat on? Or maybe do you have the freelancer that you have an agreement with that says, if my financial guy is not available, can I use you, or can I call you, or can I bring you in and get you trained to be able to answer those questions so that I don't personally have to put that hat on, but that hat is being satisfied inside the organization?
Well, I'm going to pivot over here for a second. And with these four hats, there should be also a pin that goes in front of the hat for some of these roles, the delegation hat,
Right.
right?
Yep.
You got to delegate.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely true. So, and it depends on which hat, because the leader hat, establishing the culture, for example, and looking at the people side of things, is that a delegation issue, or maybe that's an empowerment issue? Where wearing the manager hat is more of a delegating, task oriented, where you say, I pick you to do this job, follow this process, and get this work done. That's a manager hat. If I have my leader hat on, I come to you and say, look, this responsibility needs to be taken care of. I believe that you're the best guy for the job. Would you take that on?
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole different conversation with a different approach because I'm wearing a different hat.
Out of the four hats that make up leadership, is one hat, and this is on a broad level, one hat that is usually more important than the other hat?
And the quick answer to that is no, right? Because every business needs to be scalable, needs to look toward the future and see what the trends are. That's the entrepreneur hat. Every organization needs a culture established intentionally instead of by default. Every organization needs a team of people that work together in order to get a job done. That's the leader hat. Every organization needs processes and systems put in place and measurements by KPIs, key performance indicators. That's the management hat. Every organization needs a specialist to go to who has all the answers. That's the specialist hat. Is there one more important than the other? No, it depends on what the outcome is and what the need is at that time as to which role I'm playing.
Is it a bad thing to learn as much as you can about all the hats, just so you're, as a, let's say, the leader of your team, company owner, just so you're able to get the job done? You may not be the most proficient at one of the hats. Let's say if you're a manager, maybe you're not. And I think entrepreneurs have a level of creativity that they have to wear that within their hat. But do you think that you should get a good knowledge of all the hats? And is there any caveat to that? Let's say you're not really good at this hat or that one. Could that be counterproductive?
It could be. And that's the reason why in the intentional success system, the sixth driver is the right people in the right place doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason. Which means if I'm an entrepreneur starting a new business and I know I have good entrepreneur skills and I have good management skills, but I'm a terrible leader, then my first priority is to bring somebody on with me who has leadership skills that can satisfy that role.
So let's change it up now and go from the professional world to the personal world with the same hats.
Okay, sounds good. So if you put your entrepreneur hat on, what are we doing inside a business? We're setting direction, creating vision, we're looking toward the future. Now think about our personal life. Our personal life needs those same skills. Where am I going? What's my purpose in life? And how am I fulfilling that? And what really matters on a day-to-day basis in order for me to fulfill that role, I need to have an entrepreneurial mindset in order to be able to look in that way and say, this is where I'm going, this is the outcome, this is my purpose, and here's how I'm going to get to that future. Now, that's me personally. What about my primary relationship? What about my family? Don't I need to have that same mindset in figuring out what's the purpose for my marriage? Where do I want my family to be? What kind of trends do I want to establish? What kind of traditions, right? Every family has a tradition. What kind of traditions do I want to establish in my family that will outlast me and move on to my kids and my grandkids? That's an entrepreneurial mindset.
It's interesting how you apply that. Out of all the hats, apply the entrepreneur hat to the personal life.
Right?
Wow.
We don't normally think in those terms, but if we don't, we're missing an opportunity to set intentional parameters for our life that we normally take for granted and are set by default. And then we find ourselves reacting to life instead of designing the kind of life that we want.
Is that essentially somebody always in the reactive mode as opposed to the proactive mode?
Always. I mean, I believe personally that because we're human beings, we have been hardwired to react, right? We've got this fight or flight mechanism, this binary approach to life, which, when you think about it, is a reactionary way of living.
I never thought of it that way. And I've done many podcasts and talked to many professionals in terms of our evolution, why we do what we do, limiting beliefs, things that are in our subconscious. And it all comes back to, from what I understand, fear. We are fear-based. We are
Correct.
programmed to look at the negative to protect us. And that goes back, that's why we're still here, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
But unfortunately,
But here's the challenge,
Mhm.
right? All that was built in because our environment was wrought with things to be afraid of.
Oh yeah.
Okay. But if you look at 21st century, our environment is completely different. We've created the environment that we have today, and it is not fraught with all of those fearful built in mechanisms that are part of the culture, right? Think about this. We are only born with two fears. Do you know what they are?
Don't tell me. Fear of loud noises
Correct.
and fear of falling.
Absolutely correct. Good for
I think I
you.
learned that from you.
There you go. Right? But think about this. Every other fear that we have
Yeah, it's made up.
has been learned and programmed into us.
Yes, I completely agree. And going back to the beginning of humans' time, the cave person, yeah, what do they have to do? They had to, procreate and worry about food and predators. You're
Right.
inside the cave. Your intuition tells you there's a pterodactyl. You're in fright mode. You're always in guarded mode. Oh,
You
wait,
got it.
I'm not going outside. Maybe there was a loud noise, and that's why you're still inside the cave. But we
Right?
don't have those challenges anymore. But that's in our DNA.
Yeah, absolutely right. And so, for example, we are leaving for work and we have a slight disagreement with our spouse or one of our kids as we're leaving for work. We get sort of wrapped up into that conversation. We absorb the negativity of that situation. Do we bring that to work?
All the time.
All the time. Now, as a result of that, everything that happens to us is filtered through that lens. Okay? And
Mm.
we're looking at everything at work through the lens of I'm emotionally distraught.
Yep.
How am I going to deal with situations at work? I'm going to react, right?
And you might
Now,
not even know that it's still affecting you, but there's the other part. Many believe that everything we experience from the beginning of our time is in our DNA. It's in your body. So that
absolutely
argument you
correct.
had this morning had made an imprint
Yep.
in psychologically and physiologically in your body.
Yep.
So even if you say, that was then, I'm going to deal with this when I get home today. I'm going to put that to aside and then going to work to do my job. I have a lot going on today. It's still going to affect you.
Absolutely right. And so we go through work, we accumulate some negativity on top of what we
Mm,
brought to work,
mm.
and now we're getting ready to go home. Are we really excited and intentional and proactive about going home and greeting the spouse or greeting the kids? Or are we fearful about what we might encounter when we get home?
Yes, obviously.
Right?
Uh,
Yeah.
and
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 so when I walk in the door, I'm already in reactive mode.
on guard. Yeah.
Yep,
You're waiting for the pterodactyl.
absolutely correct.
And even at work, after the argument, let's say the night before, maybe early that morning, you're at work, you're doing your thing, you think you've isolated the situation, but then somebody confronts you with something and you snap at them because
Absolutely.
that could have been the pterodactyl.
Yep, absolutely correct.
Mm.
So, my submission to you is this: before you leave the house, you put your leader hat on and you say to your spouse or your kid that you had the disagreement with, I love you. I want to continue this conversation when I get home, but I don't want to do it in a negative, reactive kind of way. So let's go and enjoy our day. We'll come back, we'll hug each other, and we'll pick up the conversation and come to a logical, wonderful outcome at the end.
It's almost as if you diffuse the situation for yourself and others.
Absolutely correct. But you're
Wow,
doing it intentionally based on wearing that hat or putting that mindset on.
for sure. Wow. Huh. Few minutes left. How do the other hats look in a personal situation?
So when we put on the leader hat, I just gave you one example of doing that. The manager hat, for example, builds routine and boundaries and structure for the family and for the finances and for the relationship with the spouse and my personal health, my emotional health. I'm setting boundaries and structure in order to be able to do those things. And then there are things that I have to get done. I have to follow through on my commitments. I have to follow through on the structure and the processes that my manager mindset put on. And so I put my specialist hat on and I go do what I'm supposed to do and accomplish it in the best possible way.
Your home. Give me an example of the specialist hat that you would put on. Yeah, a hypothetical scenario.
Okay. So I put a routine together for my personal health. And that structure is more than just the gym. It has to do with my diet. It has to do with my medication. It has to do with my meditation. It has to do with a variety of other things. In my manager mindset, I'm putting the structure together to make that happen. And then I put the specialist hat on and I follow that plan in order to make sure that it gets done and the outcome is what I want it to be.
Hypothetical example of I just put the entrepreneur hat on.
Okay. So I asked myself the question, where do I want my family dynamic to be in the next 2 to 3 years? And what do I have to put in place in order to make that dynamic come about?
You could even use that entrepreneur hat, even planning a family vacation.
Absolutely correct.
Wow.
Yep.
Interesting how it all works.
Now, the question becomes, we said before that the entrepreneur hat is a risk-taking hat, right? And so I have to ask myself, do I need to take certain risks in the way that I put my family dynamic together or the way that I put my special relationship with my spouse together? Or do I have to take some risks with my personal health in order to get where I ultimately want to go? And I calculate those risks. And then I put my manager hat on to put the structure and the process in place in order to make those things happen.
It could be, you may say, let's go cross country this summer. We've been talking about it. We never did it. It's easy to get on a plane and land on an island and spend a week there. We're going to go for 3 weeks. We're going to rent an RV and we're going cross country.
Yep.
And there are risks involved in that. The weather, never drove an RV before, on and on and on.
Right.
It's not like you're going to take risks where, you're compromising your life and your families.
Exactly.
But then
well,
I guess
I'll give you a personal example.
Sure.
Years and years ago, I had a friend who was getting married in the northeast part of the country, and I had another friend who was getting married in the southwest portion of the country. And my wife and I decided we would pack all of our camping gear into our 76 Super Beetle, and we would travel the country for a month, hitting the weddings of each of our friends, and then exploring the rest of the country while we're going, right? We had to do a lot of planning and a lot of understanding of how that was going to work and what kind of risks we were going to take and what kind of experiences we might have and be intentional about if this happens, what are we going to do, right? So there was all of the hats, all of the mindsets in planning that month to make sure that it worked out the way that it did. And it was a fabulous month.
And you know what? As we talk hypothetically here, I can see where the different hats come into play. Certainly the management hat there, the specialist hat too. There's a place for a specialist. And let's say if you're not the full hat wearer of that, even on the RV trip, I may call upon my friend Rich, who used to own an RV. He's the specialist, and ask him, hey, which one should I rent? Is bigger
Right.
better? Like all those little things that you may not be a specialist in.
Absolutely right.
but somebody else can help you out with that.
Yeah. And
Fascinating.
it's part of, again, pulling the right team together to be able to help you out.
Right. Your
So
resources.
if I'm not big on finance and my personal finances and family finances are not where they need to be, do I force myself to learn those things? Or do I bring in a coach, or do I bring in a freelancer that could help me do that and give them the specialist hat in order to be able to get that job done?
This is really cool. Got to tell you, it really is applying this. And I wondered how I was clueless how this would apply. The business side, I got it, but apply to the personal life.
Yeah.
Amazing. This is just a piece of intentional achievements. How do we find out more, Joe?
intentionalachievements.com. And then they'll be able to look at all of our programs. If you would like a free gift that talks about a lot of this kind of stuff, intentionalachievements.com/getmygift. And you'll get one of our free booklets that'll help on deepen your understanding of the things that we're talking about.
Beautiful. And if somebody does opt for one of the programs, very affordable. I mean, this information here,
I think so.
It really is. You're not going to find it easily online. You're not going to fully understand it. You have a superpower in providing concise clarity on all of this. It's very easy to understand, and then take it and use it, as opposed to lately I have an app where I love checking out different books, even ones that are written a few years ago about self-improvement, things like that. I get it in 19 minutes using AI. And maybe, some would say, well, you're not getting the full effect. I'm getting what I need.
Absolutely right.
Yeah. And this is to me seems similar in terms of getting what you need.
Well, and talk about the cost effectiveness. Our coach certification program, for example, to certify coaches, the same program with other coaches at our level will cost anywhere between 10 and 20 grand, and ours is 3,000. Because we don't want money to stand in the way of people getting what they need to get to improve their lives.
And look what you can do with that if your goal is to be a life coach, even if it's a side thing. I know a lot of people, doing that on the side.
Absolutely correct.
You make that back potentially in one client.
Yeah, that's right.
Joe, thank you so much for today. We will talk soon.
Thank you, sir.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.